Rabbit had been good at math. It was a game with limits, with orderly movements and a promise of completion at the end. The combination always cracked open. Nelson is tight about it, afraid to let go and swing. A smart kid, but tight, afraid of maybe that thing that got his baby sister, afraid it might come back for him. They have half an hour before laugh-in, which they all want to watch. Tonight Skeeter takes the big brown chair and Rabbit the one with silver threads. Jill and Nelson sit on the air-foam sofa. Skeeter has some books. They look childishly bright under his thin brown hands. School Days, Sesame Street. Skeeter says to Rabbit, "Chuck, I've been thinking I sold out the truth last night when I said your slavery was a country thing. The fact upon reflection appears to be that your style of slavery was uniquely and especially bad, about the worst indeed this poor blood-soaked globe has ever seen." Skeeter's voice as he speaks exerts a steady pressure, wind rattling a dead tree. His eyes never deviate to Nelson or Jill. Rabbit, a game student, in high school he used to get B's, asks, "What was so bad about it?" "Let me guess what you think. You think it wasn't so bad on the plantations, right? What with banjos and all the fritters you could eat and old massa up at the big house instead of the Department of Welfare, right? Those niggers were savages anyway. They're chuckleheads pure bone, and if they didn't like it, well, why didn't they just up and die in their chains like the noble old red man, right?" "Yeah, why didn't they?" I love that question, because I have the answer. The reason is old Tonto was so primitive, farm work made no sense to him. He was on the moon, right, and just withered away. Now the black man, he was from West Africa, where they had agriculture, where they had social organization. How do you think those slaves got to the coast from 1,000 miles away? Black men arranged it. They wouldn't cut the white men in. They kept the pie all for themselves. Organization men, right? That's interesting. I'm glad you said that. I am grateful for your interest. He meant it, Jill intercedes. "Swallow your tongue," Skeeter says without looking toward her. "Swallow your tongue yourself," Nelson intervenes. Rabbit would be proud of the boy, but he feels that Nelson's defense of Jill, like Skeeter's attack, are automatic, parts of a pattern the three have developed while he is away working. "The readings," Jill prompts. Skeeter explains, "Little Jilly and I today been talking, and her idea is to make our nights more structured, right? We'd read aloud a few things, otherwise I'm apt to do all the talking. That is, until you decide to dump me on the floor again. Let me get a beer, then. Put pimples on your belly, man. Let me light up some good Tijuana brass and pass it over. Old athlete like you shouldn't be getting a beer gut, right?" Rabbit neither agrees nor moves. He glances at Nelson. The kid's eyes are sunk and shiny, frightened but not to the point of panic. He is learning. He trusts them. He frowns over to stop his father looking at him. Around them the furniture, the fireplace that never holds a fire, the driftwood base like a corpse lying propped on one arm, listens. A quiet rain has begun at the windows, sealing them in. Skeeter holds his lips pinched to seal into himself the first volumes of sweet smoke, then exhales, sighing, and leans back into the chair, vanishing between the brown wings, but for the glass and silver circles of his spectacles. He says, "He was property, right? From Virginia on it was profit and capital, absolutely. The King of England, all he cared about was tobacco cash, right? Black men just blots on the balance sheet to him. Now the King of Spain, he knew black men from way back. Those Moors had run his country, and some had been pretty smart. So south of the border a slave was property, but he was also other things. King of Spain say, 'That's my subject. He has legal rights, right?' Church say, 'That's an everlasting immortal soul there. Baptize him. Teach him right from wrong. His marriage vows are sacred, right? If he rustles up the bread to buy himself free, you got to sell.' This was all written in the law down there. Up here, the law said one thing, no rights, no rights. This is no man, this is one warm piece of animal meat worth 1,000 USA cold-blooded clams. Can't let it marry, that might mess up selling it when the market is right. Can't let it go and testify in court. That might mess up Whitey's property rights. There was no such thing, no such, believe me, as the father of a slave child. That was a legal fact. Now, how could the law get that way? Because they did believe a nigger was a piece of shit. And they was scared of their own shit. Man, those crackers were sick, and they knew it absolutely. All those years talking about happy Rastas chomping on watermelon, they was scared shitless of uprisings. Uprisings, Chuck. When there hadn't been more than 2 or 3 the whole 100 years, and those not amounted to a bucket of piss. They was scared rigid, right? Scared of blacks learning to read, scared of blacks learning a trade, scared of blacks on the job market. There was no place for a freed man to go once he was freed. All that talk about free soil, the first thing the Free Soil Convention in Kansas said was, "We don't want no black faces here. Keep 'em away from our eyeballs." The thing about these benighted states all around is that it was never no place like other places where this happens because that happens, and some men have more luck than others, so let's push a little here and give a little here. No, sir, this place was never such a place. It was a dream. It was a state of mind from those poor fool pilgrims on, right? Some white man see a black man, he don't see a man, he sees a symbol, right? All these people around here are walking around inside their own heads. They don't even know if you kick somebody else it hurts. Jesus won't even tell them because the Jesus they brought over on the boats was the meanest, most deballed Jesus the good Lord ever let run around scaring people. Scared. Scared. I'm scared of you, you scared of me. Nelson's scared of us both. And poor Jilly here's so scared of everything she'll run and hide herself in dope again if we don't all act like big daddies to her. He offers the smoking, wet-licked reefer around. Rabbit shakes his head no. Skeeter, Jill says, the selections. A prim clubwoman calling the meeting to order. 13 minutes to laugh in, Nelson says. I don't want to miss the beginning. It's neat when they introduce themselves. Right, Skeeter says, fumbling at his forehead, at that buzzing that seems sometimes there. Out of this book here, the book is called Slavery, the letters are red, white, and blue. It seems a small carnival under Skeeter's slim hand. Just for the fun of it, to give us something more solid than my ignorant bad-mouthing, right? You know, like a happening. Chuck, this gives you pretty much a pain in the ass, right? No, I like it. I like learning stuff. I have an open mind. He turns me on. He's so true to life, Skeeter says, handing the book to Jill. Baby, you begin. Where my finger is. Just the part in little type. He announces, these are old-time speeches, dig? Jill sits up straight on the sofa and reads in a voice higher than her natural voice, a nice girl-schooled voice with riding lessons in it, and airy big white curtained rooms, territory even above Penn Park. Think, she reads, of the nation's deed, done continually and afresh. God shall hear the voice of your brother's blood, long crying from the ground. His justice asks you even now, America, where is thy brother? This is the answer which America must give. Lo, he is there in the rice swamps of the South, in her fields teeming with cotton and the luxuriant cane. He was weak, and I seized him, naked, and I bound him, ignorant, poor, and savage, and I overmastered him. I laid on his feebler shoulders my grievous yoke. I have chained him with my fetters, beat him with my whip. Other tyrants had dominion over him, but my finger was on his human flesh. I am fed with his toil, fat, voluptuous on his sweat and tears and blood. I stole the father, stole also the sons, and set them to toil. His wife and daughters are a pleasant spoil to me. Behold the children also of thy servant and his handmaidens, sons swarthier than their sire. Askest thou for the African? I have made him a beast. Lo, there thou hast what is thine. She hands the book back, blushing. Her glance at Rabbit says, bear with us. Haven't I loved you? Skeeter is cackling. Green pickles, that turns me on. A pleasant spoil to me, right? And did you dig that beautiful bit about the sons swarthier than their sire? Those old Yankee sticks were really bugged. One respectable fuck would have stopped the abolition movement cold. But they weren't getting it back home in the barn, so they sure gave hell to those crackers getting it out in the slave shed. Dark meat is soul meat, right? That was Theodore Parker. Here's another, the meanest mouth in the crowd, old William Lloyd. Nellie, you try this. Just where I've marked. Just the words slow. Don't try for any expression. Gaudy book in hand, the boy looks toward his father for rescue. I feel stupid. Rabbit says, read, Nelson, I want to hear it. He turns for help elsewhere. Skeeter, you promised I wouldn't have to. I said we'd see how it went. Come on, your daddy likes it. He has an open mind. You're just poking fun of everybody. Let him off, Rabbit says. I'm losing interest. Jill intervenes. Do it, Nelson. It'll be fun. We won't turn on laughing until you do. The boy plunges in, stumbling, frowning so hard his father wonders if he doesn't need glasses. No matter, he reads, though every party should be torn by Jill looks over his shoulder, dissensions. Every sect dashed into fragments, the national compact dissolved. Jill says, good. Let him ride, Skeeter says, his eyes shut, nodding. Nelson's voice gains confidence. The land filled with the horrors of a civil and a servile war, still slavery must be buried in the grave of infantry. Infamy, Jill corrects. Infamy, beyond the possibility of a resurrection. If the state cannot survive the anti-slavery agitation, then let the state perish. If the church must be cast down by the strugglings of humanity, then let the church fall, and its fragments be scattered to the four winds of heaven, never more to curse the earth. If the American Union cannot be maintained except by immolating, what's that? Sacrificing, Jill says. Rabbit says, I thought it meant burn. Nelson looks up, uncertain he should continue. The rain continues at the windows, gently nailing them in, tighter together. Skeeter's eyes are still closed. Finish up. Do the last sentence, Baby Chuck. If the Republic must be blotted out from the roll of nations by proclaiming liberty to the captives, then let the Republic sink beneath the waves of oblivion, and a shout of joy, louder than the voice of many waters, fill the universe at its extinction. I don't understand what any of this stuff means. Skeeter says, it means more power to the people, death to the fascist pigs. Rabbit says, to me it means throw the baby out with the bath. He remembers a tub of still water, a kind of dust on its dead surface. He relives the shock of reaching down through it to pull the plug. He loops back into the room where they are sitting now within the rain. Jill is explaining to Nelson, he's saying what Skeeter says. If the system, even if it works for most people, has to oppress some of the people, then the whole system should be destroyed. Do I say that? No. Skeeter leans forward from the mossy brown wings, reaching a trembling thin hand toward the young people, all parody shaken from his voice. That'll come anyway. That big boom. It's not the poor blacks setting the bombs. It's the offspring of the white rich. It's not injustice pounding at the door, it's impatience. Put enough rats in a cage, the fat ones get more frantic than the skinny ones because they feel more squeezed. No, we must look past that, past the violence, into the next stage. That it's going to blow up, we can assume. That's not interesting. What comes next is what's interesting. There's got to be a great calm. And you're the black Jesus going to bring it in, Rabbit mocks. From AD to AS, after Skeeter. I should live so long. All praise be Skeeter's name. He offers to sing, but Skeeter is concentrating on the other two, disciples. People talk revolution all the time, but revolution's not interesting, right? Revolution is just one crowd taking power from another, and that's bullshit. That's just power, and power is just guns and gangsters. And that's boring bullshit, right? People say to me, free Huey. I say, screw Huey. He's just Agnew in blackface. World forgets gangsters like that before they're dead. No. The problem is really, when the gangsters have knocked each other off and taken half of everybody else with them, to make use of the space. After the Civil War ended, there was space, only they let it fill up with that same old greedy muck, only worse, right? They turned that old dog-eat-dog thing into a divine law. That's what we need, Skeeter, Rabbit says, some new divine laws. Why don't you go up to the top of Mount Judge and have 'em handed to you on a tablet? Skeeter turns that nicely carved knife handle of a face to him slowly, says slowly, I'm no threat to you, Chuck. You're set. Only thing I could do to you is kill you, and that matters less than you think, right? Jill delicately offers to make peace. Didn't we pick out something for Harry to read? Fuck it, Skeeter says. That won't swing now. He's giving off ugly vibes, right? He's not ready. He is immature. Rabbit is hurt. He had only been kidding. Come on, I'm ready. Give me my thing to read. Skeeter asks Nelson, what say, Baby Chuck? Thinks he's ready? Nelson says, you must read it right, Dad. No poking fun. Me? Who'd I ever poke fun of? Mommy. Skeeter gives him the book open to a page. Just a little bit. Just read where I've marked. Soft red crayon. Those Crayola boxes that used to remind him of bleachers with every head a different color. This strange return. I believe, my friends and fellow citizens, Rabbit reads thrillingly, we are not prepared for this suffrage, but we can learn. Give a man tools and let him commence to use them, and in time he will learn a trade. So it is with voting. We may not understand it at the start, but in time we shall learn to do our duty. The rain makes soft applause. Skeeter tips his narrow head and smiles at the two children on the sofa. Makes a pretty good nigger, don't he? Nelson says, don't, Skeeter. He didn't poke fun, so you shouldn't. Nothing wrong with what I said. That's what the world needs, pretty good niggers, right? To show Nelson how tough he is, Rabbit tells Skeeter, this is all bleeding heart stuff. It'd be like me bellyaching that the Swedes were pushed around by the Finns in the year Zilch. Nelson cries, we're missing Laugh-In. They turn it on. The cold, small star expands. A torrent of stripes snaps into a picture. Sammy Davis, Jr. is being the little dirty old man, tapping along behind the park bench, humming that aimless, sad doodling tune. He perks up, seeing there is someone sitting on the bench. It is not Ruth Buzzy, but Arnie Johnson, the white, the real little dirty old man. They sit side by side and stare at each other. They are like one man looking into a crazy mirror. Nelson laughs. They all laugh. Nelson, Jill, Rabbit, Skeeter. Kindly the rain fastens them in, a dressmaker patting and stitching all around the house, fitting its great wide gown. Skeeter asks him another night, you want to know how a Negro feels? Not much. Dad, don't, Nelson says. Jill, silent, abstracted, passes Rabbit the joint. He takes a tentative puff. Has hardly held a cigarette in 10 years, scared to inhale. Nearly sick after the other time in Jimbo's. You suck and hold it down, hold it down. Imagine, Skeeter is saying, being in a glass box, and every time you move towards something, your head gets bumped. Imagine being on a bus, and everybody moving away, 'cause your whole body's covered with pustulating scabs, and they're scared to get the disease. Rabbit exhales, lets it out. That's not how it is. These black kids on buses are pushy as hell. You've said so much type the world is lead, right? You don't hate nobody, right? Nobody. Serenely. Space is transparent. How you feel about those Penn Park people? Which ones? All those ones live in those great big pie-crust mock two-door houses with his and hers caddies parked out by the hydrangea bushes. How about all those old farts down at the Mifflin Club with all those iron gates that used to own the textile mills and now don't own anything but a heap of paper keeps 'em in cigars and girlfriends? How about those? Let 'em settle in before you answer. Rabbit pictures Penn Park, the timbered gables, the stucco, the weedless lawns plumped up like pillows. It was on a hill. He used to imagine it on the top of a hill he could never climb, because it wasn't a real hill like Mount Judge. and he and Mom and Pop and Mim lived near the foot of this hill, in the dark next to the Bolgers, and Pop came home from work every day too tired to play catch in the backyard, and Mom never had jewelry like other women, and they bought day-old bread because it was a penny cheaper, and Pop's teeth hurt to keep money out of the dentist's hands, and now Mom's dying was a game being played by doctors who drove caddies and had homes in Penn Park. "I hate them," he tells Skeeter. The black man's face lights up, shines, deeper. Rabbit fears the feeling will be fragile and vanish if he looks at it, but it does not. It expands, explodes. Timbered gables, driveway pebbles, golf clubs fill the sky with debris. He remembers one doctor. He met him early this summer by accident, coming up on the porch to visit Mom. The doctor hurrying out under the fanlight that sees everything, in a swank cream raincoat, though it had just started to sprinkle. That kind of dude, who produces a raincoat from nowhere when proper, all set up, life-licked, tweed trousers, knife-sharp over polished, strapped shoes, hurrying to his next appointment, anxious to get away from this drizzling, tilted street. Pop worrying his teeth like an old woman in the doorway, performing introductions. Our son Harry, pathetic pride. The doctor's irritation at being halted even a second, setting a prong of distaste on his upper lip behind the clipped mustache the color of iron. His handshake also metal, arrogant. It pinches Harry's unready hand and says, "I am strong. I twist bodies to my will. I am life. I am death." "I hate those Penn Park motherfuckers," Harry amplifies, performing for Skeeter, wanting to please him. "If I could push the red button to blow them all to Kingdom Come," he pushes a button in midair, "I would." He pushes the button so hard he can see it there. Kaboom, right? Skeeter grins, flinging wide his stick-like arms. "But it is," Rabbit says. "Everybody knows black pussy is beautiful. It's on posters even now." Skeeter asks, "How you think all this mammy shit got started? Who you think put all those hog-fat, churchified old women at the age of 30 in Harlem?" "Not me." "It was you. Man, you is just who it was. From those breedin' cabins on, you made the black girl feel sex was shit, so she hid from it as quick as she could in the mammy bit, right? Well, tell 'em it's not shit. They don't believe me, Chuck. They see I don't count. I have no muscle, right? I can't protect my black women, right? 'Cause you don't let me be a man." "Go ahead, be one." Skeeter gets up from the armchair with the silver threads and circles the imitation cobbler's bench with a wary, hunchbacked quickness, and kisses Jill where she sits on the sofa. Her hands, after a startled jerk, knit together and stay in her lap. Her head does not pull back nor strain forward. Rabbit cannot see, around the eclipsing orb of Skeeter's afro, Jill's eyes. He can see Nelson's eyes. They are warm, watery holes, so dark, so stricken he would like to stick pins into them to teach the child there is worse. Skeeter straightens from kissing, wipes the Jill spit from his mouth. "A pleasant spoil. Chuck, how do you like it?" "I don't mind if she doesn't." Jill has closed her eyes, her mouth open on a small bubble. "She does mind it," Nelson protests. "Dad, don't let him." Rabbit says to Nelson, "Bedtime, isn't it?" Physically, Skeeter fascinates Rabbit, the lustrous pallor of the tongue and palms and the soles of the feet left out of the sun, or a different kind of skin. White palms never tan either. The peculiar glinting luster of his skin. The something so very finely turned and finished in the face, reflecting light at a dozen polished points. In comparison, white faces are blobs, putty still drying. The curious greased grace of his gestures, rapid and watchful as a lizard's motions, free of mammalian fat. Skeeter in his house feels like a finely made electric toy. Harry wants to touch him, but is afraid he will get a shock. "Okay?" "Not especially." Jill's voice seems to come from further away than beside him in the bed. "Why not?" "I'm scared." "Of what, of me?" "Of you and him together." "We're not together, we hate each other's guts." She asks, "When are you kicking him out?" "They'll put him in jail." "Good." The rain is heavy above them, beating everywhere, inserting itself in that chimney flashing that always leaked. He pictures a wide brown stain on the bedroom ceiling. He asks, "What's with you and him?" She doesn't answer. Her lean cameo profile is lit by a flash. Seconds pass before the thunder arrives. He asks shyly, "He getting into you?" "Not that way anymore." He says that's not interesting. He wants me another way now. What way can that be? Poor girl, crazy suspicious. He wants me to tell him about God. He says he's going to bring some mesk for me. The thunder follows the next flash more closely. That's crazy, but exciting. Maybe she can do it. Maybe he can get music out of her like Babe out of the piano. He is crazy, Jill says. I'll never be hooked again. What can I do? Rabbit feels paralyzed by the rain, the thunder, by his curiosity, by his hope for a break in the combination, for catastrophe and deliverance. The girl cries out, but thunder comes just then, and he has to ask her to repeat it. "All you care about is your wife," she shouts upward into the confusion in heaven. Payasek comes up behind him and mumbles about the phone. Rabbit drags himself up, worse than a liquor hangover, must stop every night, must get a grip on himself, get a grip, get angry. "Janice, for Christ's sake." "It isn't Janice, Harry, it's me, Peggy." "Oh, hi. How's Trix? How's Ollie?" "Forget Ollie. Don't ever mention his name to me. He hasn't been to see Billy in weeks or contributed anything to his keep. And when he finally does show up, you know what he brings? He's a genius, you'll never guess. Another mini-bike? A puppy. He brought us a golden retriever puppy. Now what the hell can we do with a puppy with Billy off in school and me gone from 8 to 5 every day?" "You got a job. Congratulations. What do you do?" "I type tape for Brewer Fealty over at Youngquist's. They're putting all their records on computer tape, and not only is the work so boring you could scream, you don't even know when you've made a mistake. It comes out just holes in this tape, all these premium numbers. It sounds nifty. Peggy, speaking of work, they don't appreciate my being called here." Her voice retreats, puts on dignity. "Pardon me. I wanted to talk to you when Nelson wasn't around. Ollie has promised Billy to take him fishing next Sunday, not this Sunday. And I wondered, since it doesn't look as if you'll ever ask me, if you'd like to have dinner Saturday when you bring him over." Her open bathrobe, that pubic patch, the silver stretch marks, don't count your chickens. Meaning, do count your chickens. "That might be great," he says. "Might be? I'll have to see. I'm kind of tied up these days." "Hasn't that man gone yet? Kick him out, Harry." This book is... "Hasn't that man gone yet? Kick him out, Harry. He's taking incredible advantage of you. Call the police if he won't go. Really, Harry, you're much too passive." "Yeah, or something." Only after shutting the office door behind him and starting to walk through the solid brightness toward his machine does he feel the marijuana clutch at him, drag at his knees like a tide. Never again. Let Jesus come at him another way. "Tell us about Vietnam, Skeeter." The grass is mixing with his veins, and he feels very close to them all. The driftwood lamp, Nelson's thatch of hair, an anxious tangle, Jill's bare legs, a touch unshaped at the ankles. He loves them, all. His voice moves in and out behind their eyes. Skeeter's eyes roll red toward the ceiling. Things are pouring for him through the ceiling. "Why you want to be told?" he asks. "Because I wasn't there." "Think you should have been there, right?" "Yes." "Why would that be?" "I don't know. Duty? Guilt?" "No, sir. You want to have been there because that is where it was at, right?" "Okay." "It was the best place," Skeeter says, not quite as a question. "Something like that." Skeeter goes on, gently urging, "It was where you would have felt not so deballed, right?" "I don't know. If you don't want to talk about it, don't. Let's turn on television." "Mod Squad will be on," Nelson says. Skeeter explains, "If you can't fuck, dirty pictures won't do it for you, right? And then if you can, they don't do it either." "Okay, don't tell us anything. And try to watch your language in front of Nelson." At night, when Jill turns herself to him in bed, he finds the unripe hardness of her young body repels him. The smoke inside him severs his desires from his groin. He is full of flitting desires that prevent him from directly answering her woman's call, a call he helped create in her girl's body. Yet in his mind he sees her mouth defiled by Skeeter's kiss and feels her rotting with his luminous poison. Nor can he forgive her for having been rich. Yet through these nightly denials, these quiet debasements, he feels something unnatural strengthening within him that may be love. On her side, she seems more and more to cling to him. They have come far from that night when she went down on him like a little girl bobbing for apples. This fall, Nelson has discovered soccer. The junior high school has a team, and his small size is no handicap. Afternoons, Harry comes home to find the child kicking the ball, sewn of black and white pentagons, again and again against the garage door, beneath the unused basketball backboard. The ball bounces by Nelson. Harry picks it up. It feels bizarrely seamed in his hands. He tries a shot at the basket. It misses clean. The touch is gone, he says. It's a funny feeling, he tells his son, when you get old. The brain sends out the order, and the body looks the other way. Nelson resumes kicking the ball vehemently with the side of his foot against a spot on the door already worn paintless. The boy has mastered that trick of trapping the ball to a dead stop under his knees. Where are the other two? Inside, acting funny. How funny? You know, the way they act. Dopey. Skeeter's asleep on the sofa. Hey, Dad. What? Nelson kicks the ball once, twice, hard as he can, until it gets by him, and he has worked up nerve to tell, I hate the kids around here. What kids? I never see any. When I was a kid, we were all over the streets. They watch television and go to Little League and stuff. Why do you hate them? Nelson has retrieved the ball and is shuffling it from one foot to the other, his feet clever as hands. Tommy Frankhauser said we had a nigger living with us, and said his father said it was ruining the neighborhood and we'd better watch out. What did you say to that? I said he better watch out himself. Did you fight? I wanted to, but he's a head taller than me, even though we're in the same grade, and he just laughed. Don't worry about it. You'll shoot up. All us Angstroms are late bloomers. I hate them, Dad. I hate them. And he heads the ball so it bounces off the shadow-lined shingles of the garage roof. Mustn't hate anybody, Harry says, and goes in. Jill is in the kitchen crying over a pan of lamb chops. The flame keeps getting too big, she says. She has the gas turned down so low the little nipples of blue are sputtering. He turns it higher, and Jill screams, falls against him, presses her face into his chest, peeks up with eyes amusement has dyed deep green. You smell of ink, she tells him. You're all ink, so clean, just like a new newspaper. Every day a new newspaper comes to the door. He holds her close. Her tears tingle through his shirt. Has Skeeter been feeding you anything? No, Daddy. I mean, lover. We stayed in the house all day and watched the quizzes. Skeeter hates the way they always have Negro couples on now. He says it's tokenism. He smells her breath, and as she has promised, there is nothing, no liquor, no grass, just a savor of innocence, a faint tinge of sugar, a glimpse of a porch swing, and a beaded pitcher. Tea, he says. What an elegant little nose, she says of his, and pinches it. That's right. Skeeter and I had iced tea this afternoon. She keeps caressing him, rubbing against him, making him sad. You're elegant all over, she says. You're an enormous snowman, twinkling all over, except you don't have a carrot for a nose. You have it here. Hey, he says, hopping backwards. Jill tells him urgently, I like you there better than Skeeter. I think being circumcised makes men ugly. Can you make the supper? Maybe you should go up and lie down. I hate you when you're so uptight, she tells him, but without hate, in a voice swinging as a child wandering home swings a basket. Can I cook the supper? I can do anything. I can fly. I can make men satisfied. I can drive a white car. I can count in French up to any number. Look, she pulls her dress way up above her waist. I'm a Christmas tree. But the supper comes to the table badly cooked. The lamb chops are rubbery and blue near the bone. The beans crunch underdone in the mouth. Skeeter pushes his plate away. I can't eat this crud. I ain't that primitive, right? Nelson says, It tastes all right, Jill. But Jill knows and bows her thin face. Tears fall onto her plate. Strange tears, less signs of grief than chemical condensations. Tears she puts forth as a lilac puts forth buds. Skeeter keeps teasing her. Look at me, woman. Hey, you cunt, look me in the eye. What do you see? I see you, all sprinkled with sugar. You see him, right? Wrong. Look over at those drapes, honey, those ugly homemade drapes where they sort of blend into the wallpaper. He's not there, Skeeter. Look at me. Look. They all look. Since coming to live with them, Skeeter has aged. His goatee has grown bushy. His skin has taken on a captive's taut glaze. He is not wearing his glasses tonight. Skeeter, he's not there. Keep looking at me, cunt. What do you see? I see a chrysalis of mud. I see a black crab. I just thought an angel is like an insect. They have 6 legs. Isn't that true? Isn't that what you want me to say? Skeeter tells them about Vietnam. He tilts his head back as if the ceiling is a movie screen. He wants to do it justice, but is scared to let it back in. It was where it was coming to an end, he lets out slowly. There was no roofs to stay under. You stood out in the rain like a beast. You slept in holes in the ground, with the roots poking through. And you know, you could do it. You didn't die of it. That was interesting. It was like you learned there was life on another world. In the middle of a recon action, a little old gook in one of them hats would come out and try to sell you a chicken. There were these little girls, pretty as dolls, selling you smack along the road in those little cans the press photogs would throw away, right? It was very complicated. There isn't any net, he lifts his hand, to grab it all in. Colored fragments pour down toward him through the hole in the ceiling. Green machines and ugly green eating ugly green bushes. Red mud pressed in patterns to an ooze by Amtrak treads. The emerald of rice paddies, each plant set there with its reflection in the water pure as a monogram. The white of human ears a guy from another company had drying under his belt like withered apricots, white. The black of the iodide pajamas the delicate little whores wore, so figurine fine he couldn't believe he could touch them, though this clammy guy in a white suit kept pushing, saying, Black GI, #1, biggest pricks, Viet girls like suck. The red, not of blood, but of the ace of diamonds, a guy in his company wore in his helmet for luck. All that luck junk. Peace signs of melted lead, love beads, beads spelling love, horseshit, mother, bury me deep. Ho Chi Minh sandals cut from rubber tires for tiny feet. Tau crosses, Christian crosses, the cross-shaped bombs the phantoms dropped on the trail up ahead. The X's your lacers wore into your boots over the days. The shiny green body bags tied like mail sacks. Sun on red dust, on blue smoke. Sun caught in shafts between the canopies of the jungle, where dinks with Russian rifles waited quieter than orchids. It all tumbles down on him. He is overwhelmed. He knows he can never make it intelligible to these 3 Ophes, that worlds do exist beyond these paper walls. Just the sounds, Skeeter says. When one of them unfriendly mortar shells hits near your hole, it is as if a wall were there that was big and solid, 20 feet thick of noise, and you is just a gushy bug. There is feet up there just as soon step on you as not. It doesn't matter, right? It does blow your mind. And the dead are so weird. They are so dead. Like a stiff-chewed mouse the cat fetches up on the lawn. I mean, they are out of it, so peaceful. There is no word for it. This same grunt last night, he was telling you about his girl back in Oshkosh, making it so real you had to jack off. And the VC trip, a Claymore, and his legs go this way, and he goes the other. It was bad. They used to say, a world of hurt, and that was what it was. Nelson asks, what's a grunt? A grunt is a leg, an 11 bush, right? He's an ordinary drafted soldier who carries a rifle and humps the boonies. The green machine is very clever. They put the draftees out in the bush to get blown, and the re-ups sit back at Long Bend telling reporters the body count. They put old Charlie Company on some bad hills, but they didn't get me to re-up. I'd had a bushel, right? I thought I was Charlie, Rabbit says. I thought the Viet Cong was, Nelson says. You are, they are, so was I, everybody is. I was Company C for Charlie, 2nd Battalion, 28th Infantry, 1st Division. We messed around all up and down the Dong Nai River. Skeeter looks at the blank ceiling and thinks, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it justice. I'm selling it short. The holy quality is hardest to get. The thing about Charlie is he says he's everywhere. In Nam, it's all Charlies, right? Every gook's a Charlie. It got you so you didn't mind greasing an old lady, a little kid. They might be the ones planted punji stakes at night. They might not. It didn't matter. A lot of things didn't matter. Nam must be the only place in Uncle Sam's world where black-white doesn't matter. Truly, I had white boys die for me. The Army treats a black man truly swell. Black body can stop a bullet as well as any other. They put us right up there, and don't think we're not grateful. We are indeed. We hustle to stop those bullets. We're so happy to die alongside Whitey. The white ceiling still is blank, but beginning to buzz, beginning to bend into space. He must let the spirit keep lifting him along these lines. One boy I remember. Hate the way you make me bring it back. I'd give one ball to forget this. Hit in the dark. VC mortars had been working us over since sunset. We never should have been in that valley, lying there in the dark with his guts spilled out. I couldn't see him. Hustling my ass back from the perimeter, I stepped on his insides. Felt like stepping on a piece of Jell-O. Worse. He screamed out and died right then. He hadn't been dead to then. Another time, 4 of us out on recon, a bunch of their AK-47s opened up. Had an entirely different sound from the M16. More of a cracking sound, dig? Not so punky. We were pinned down. Boy with us, white boy from Tennessee, never shaved in his life and ignorant as Moses, slithered away into the bush and wiped him out. When we picked him up, bullets had cut him in 2. Impossible for a man to keep firing like that. It was bad. I wouldn't have believed you could see such bad things and keep your eyeballs. These poor unfriendlies, they'd call in the napalm on 'em just up ahead, silver cans tumbling over and over, and they'd come out of the bush right at you, burning and shooting, spitting bullets and burning like a torch in some parade, come tumbling right into your hole with you. They figured the only place to get away from the napalm was inside our perimeter. You'd shoot 'em to shut off their noise, little boys with faces like the shoeshine back at base. It got so killing didn't feel so bad. It never felt good, just necessary, like taking a piss, right? I don't want to hear any more, Nelson says. It makes me feel sick, and we're missing Samantha. Jill tells him, you must let Skeeter tell it if he wants to. It's good for Skeeter to tell it. It happened, Rabbit tells them. If it didn't happen, I wouldn't want you to be bothered with it, but it happened. So we got to take it in. We got to deal with it somehow. Schlitz. I don't know. I feel lousy. A ginger ale. Harry, you're not yourself. How's it going? Do you hear anything from Janice? Nothing, thank God. How's Mom? The old man nudges closer as if to confide an obscenity. Frankly, she's better than a month ago anybody would have dared to hope. Now Skeeter does see something on the ceiling, white on white. But the whites are different, and one is pouring out of a hole in the other. Do you know, he asks, there are 2 theories of how the universe was done. One says there was a big bang, just like in the Bible, and we're still riding that. It all came out of nothing all at once, like the good books say. Right? And the funny thing is, all the evidence backs it up. Now the other, which I prefer, says it only seems that way. Fact is, it says there is a steady state, and though it is true everything is expanding outwards, it does not thin out to next to nothingness on account of the reason that through strange holes in this nothingness, new somethingness comes pouring in from exactly nowhere. Now that, to me, has the ring of truth. Rabbit asks, what does that have to do with Vietnam? It is the local hole. It is where the world is redoing itself. It is the tail of ourselves we are eating. It is the bottom you have to have. It is the well you look into and are frightened by your own face in the dark water down there. It is, as they say, number 1 and number 10. It is the end. It is the beginning. It is beautiful. Men do beautiful things in that mud. It is where God is pushing through. He's coming, Chuck, and Baby Chuck, and Lady Chuck. Let him in. Pull down, shoot to kill, chaos in his holy face. The sun is burning through, the moon is turning red. The moon is a baby's head, bright red between his mama's legs. Nelson screams and puts his hands over his ears. I hate this, Skeeter. You're scaring me. I don't want God to come. I want him to stay where he is. I want to grow up like him. His father, Harry, the room's big man. Average and ordinary. I hate what you say about the war. It doesn't sound beautiful. It sounds horrible. Skeeter's gaze comes down off the ceiling and tries to focus on the boy. Right, he says. You still want to live? They still got you. You're still a slave. Let go. Let go, boy. Don't be a slave. Even him, you know, your daddy Chuck is learning. He's learning how to die. He's one slow learner, but he takes it a day at a time, right? He has a mad impulse. He lets it lift him. He goes and kneels before the child where he sits on the sofa beside Jill. Skeeter kneels and says, Don't keep the good Lord out, Nellie. One little boy like you put his finger in the dike, take it out, let it come. Put your hand on my head and promise you won't keep the good Lord out. Let him come. Do that for old Skeeter. He's been hurting so long. Nelson puts his hand on Skeeter's orb of hair. His eyes widen at how far his hand sinks down. He says, I don't want to hurt you, Skeeter. I don't want anybody to hurt anybody. Bless you, boy. Skeeter, in his darkness, feels blessing flow down through the hand tingling in his hair like sun burning through a cloud. Mustn't mock this child. Softly, stealthily, parting vines of craziness, his heart approaches certainty. Rabbit's voice explodes. Shit. It's just a dirty little war that has to be fought. You can't make something religious out of it just because you happen to be there. Skeeter stands and tries to comprehend this man. Trouble with you, he sees. You still cluttered up with common sense. Common sense is bullshit, man. It gets you through the days all right, but it keeps you from knowing. You just don't know, Chuck. You don't even know that now is all the time there is. What happens to you is all that happens, right? You are it, right? You are it. I've come down, he points to the ceiling, his finger a brown crayon, to tell you that, since along these 2,000 years somewhere you've done gone and forgotten again, right? Rabbit says, talk sense. Is our being in Vietnam wrong? Wrong? Man, how can it be wrong when that's the way it is? These poor benighted states just being themselves, right? Can't stop being yourself. Somebody has to do it for you, right? Nobody that big around. Uncle Sam wakes up one morning, looks down at his belly, sees he's some cockroach. What can he do? Just keep being his cockroach self is all, till he gets stepped on. No such shoe right now, right? Just keep doing his cockroach thing. I'm not one of these white liberals like that cracker Fuldull or Charlie McCarthy a while back gave all the college queers a hard-on. Think Vietnam's some sort of mistake. We can fix it up once we get the cavemen out of office. It is no mistake, right? Any president comes along falls in love with it. It is liberalism's very wang, ding-dong, pussy, and fruit. Those crackers been licking their mother's ass so long they've forgotten what she looks like frontwards. What is liberalism? Bringing joy to the world, right? Putting enough sugar on dog-eat-dog so it tastes good all over, right? Well, now what could be nicer than Vietnam? We is keeping that coast open. Man, what is we all about if it ain't keeping things open? How can money and jizz make their way if we don't keep a few cunts like that open? Nam is an act of love, right? Compared to Nam, beating Japan was flat-out ugly. We was ugly fuckers then, and now we is truly a civilized spot. The ceiling agitates. He feels the gift of tongues descend to him. We is the spot. Few old fools like the late Ho may not know it. We is what the world is begging for. Big beat, smack, black cock, big-assed cars and billboards. We is into it. Jesus come down, he come down here. These other countries just bullshit places, right? We got the ape shit, right? Bring down kingdom come, we'll swamp the world in red-hot real American blue-green apeshit, right? Right, Rabbit says. Encouraged, Skeeter sees the truth. Nam, he says, Nam, the spot where our heavenly essence is pustulatin'. Man don't like Vietnam. He don't like America. Right, Rabbit says. Right. The two others, pale, freckled faces framed in too much hair, are frightened by this agreement. Jill begs, Stop! Everything hurts. Skeeter understands. Her skin is peeled. The poor girl is wide open to the stars. This afternoon he got her to drop some mescaline. If she'll eat mesk, she'll snort smack. If she'll snort, she'll shoot. He has her. Nelson begs, Let's watch television. Rabbit asks Skeeter, How'd you get through your year over there without being hurt? These white faces, these holes punched in the perfection of his anger. God is pouring through the white holes of their faces. He cannot stanch the gushing. It gets to his eyes. They had been wicked when he was a child to teach him God was a white man. I was hurt, Skeeter says. Beatitudes of Skeeter, written down in Jill's confident, rounded, private school hand in green felt pen, playfully one night, on a sheet of Nelson's notebook filler. Power is bullshit. Love is bullshit. Common sense is bullshit. Confusion is God's very face. Nothing is interesting save eternal sameness. There is no salvation except in through me. Also, from the same night, some drawings by her in crayons Nelson found for her. Her style was cute, linear, arrested where some sophomore art class had left it, yet the resemblances were clear. Skeeter, of course, was the spade. Nelson, his dark bangs and side sheaves exaggerated, the club on a stem of a neck. Herself, her pale hair crayoned in the same pink as her sharp-chinned face, the heart. And Rabbit, therefore, the diamond. In the center of the diamond, a tiny pink nose. Sleepy, small blue eyes with worried eyebrows. An almost invisible mouth lifted as if to nibble. Around it all, green scribbles she had to identify with an affectionate pointing arrow and a balloon in the rough. One of these afternoons, when Nelson is home from soccer practice and Harry is home from work, they cram into Jill's Porsche and drive out into the county. Rabbit has to have the front seat. Nelson and Skeeter squeeze into the baggage area behind. Skeeter scuttles, blinking from the doorway to the curb, and inside the car says, Man, been so long since I've been out in the air, it hurts my lungs. Jill drives urgently, rapidly, with the arrogance of the young. Rabbit keeps slapping his foot on the floor where there is no brake. Jill's cool profile smiles. Her little foot in a ballet slipper feeds gas halfway through curves, pumps up speed enough just to pinch them past a huge truck, a raging, belching house on wheels, before another, hurtling the other way, scissors them into oblivion on a straight stretch between valleys of red earth and pale corn stubble. The country is beautiful. Fall has lifted that heavy Pennsylvania green. The sky is cleared of the suspended summer milk. The hills edge into shades of amber and flaming orange that in another month will become the locust husk tint that crackles underfoot in hunting season. A brush-fire haze floats in the valleys like fog on a river's skin. Jill stops the car beside a whitewashed fence and an apple tree. They get out into a cloud of the scent of fallen apples overripe. At their feet, apples rot in the long, dank grass that banks a trickling ditch, the grass still powerfully green. Beyond the fence, a meadow has been scraped brown by grazing, but for clumps where burdock, fed by cow dung, grows high as a man. Nelson picks up an apple and bites on the side away from wormholes. Skeeter protests, Child, don't put your mouth on that garbage. Had he never seen a fruit eaten in nature before? Jill lifts her dress and jumps the ditch to touch one of the rough, warm, whitewashed slats of the fence and to look between them into the distance, where in the dark shelter of trees a sandstone farmhouse glistens like a sugar cube soaked in tea. and the wide, gaunt wheel of an old farm wagon, spokes stilled forever, waits beside a rusty upright that must be a pump. Her eyes go blind to the green. She remembers rusty cleats that waited for the prow line of visiting boats on docks in Rhode Island and along the Sound. The whole rusty, neglected, salt-bleached, barnacled look of things built where the sea laps, summer sun on gull-gray wood, docks, sheds, metal creaking with the motion of the water, very distant from this inland over-ripeness, and says, "Let's go." And they cram back into the little car, and again there are the trucks and the gas stations and the Dutch restaurants with neon hex signs, and the wind and the speed of the car drowning out all smells and sounds and thoughts of a possible other world. The open sandstone country south of Brewer, the Amish farms printed on the trimmed fields like magazine covers, becomes the ugly hills and darker valleys north of the city, where the primitive iron industry had its day, and where the people built of brick, tall, narrow-faced homes with gables and dormers like a buzzard's shoulders, perched on domed lawns behind spiked retaining walls. The soft flower-pot red of Brewer hardens up here, 10 miles to the north, to a red dark like dried blood. Though it is not yet the coal regions, the trees feel darkened by coal dust. Rabbit begins to remember accounts, a series run in the vat, of strange murders, axings, and scaldings and stranglings committed in these pinched valleys with their narrow main streets of dried blood churches and banks and Oddfellows halls, streets that end with, as a wrung neck, a sharp turn over abandoned railroad tracks into a sunless gorge where a stream the color of tarnished silver is now and then crossed by a damp-covered bridge that rattles as it swallows you. Rabbit and Nelson, Skeeter and Jill, crush together in the little car, laugh a lot during this drive, laugh at nothing, at the silly expression of the face of a hick as they barrel past, at pigs dignified as statesmen in their pens, at the names on mailboxes, Hinnerschitz, Vogt, Stupnagel, at tractor-riding men so fat nothing less wide than a tractor seat would hold them. They even laugh when the little car, though the gas gauge stands at 1/2, jerks, struggles, slows, stops as if braked. Jill has only time to bring it to the side of the road, out of traffic. Rabbit gets out to look under the hood, but the works of this machine are not open and tall and transparent as with a linotype, but are tangled and greasy and closed. The starter churns, but the engine will not turn over. The chain of explosions that works by faith is jammed. He leaves the hood up to signal an emergency. Skeeter, crouching down in the back, calls, "Chuck, know what you're doing with that hood? You're calling down the fucking fuzz." Rabbit tells him, "You better get out of the back. We get hit from behind, you've had it. You too, Nelson, out." It is the most dangerous type of highway, 3-lane. The commuter traffic out from Brewer shudders past in an avalanche of dust and noise and carbon monoxide. No good Samaritans stop. The Porsche has stalled atop an embankment seeded with that feathery, fine-spun ground cover the state uses to hold steep soil, crown vetch. Below, swifts are skimming a shorn cornfield. Rabbit and Nelson lean against the fenders and watch the sun, an hour above the horizon, fill the field with stubble shadows, ridges subtle as those of corduroy. Jill wanders off and gathers a baby bouquet of those tiny daisy-like flowers that bloom in the fall. On stems so thin they form a circus hovering an inch or two above the earth. Jill offers the bouquet to Skeeter to lure him out. He reaches to bat the flowers from her hand. They scatter and fall in the grit of the roadside. His voice comes muffled from within the Porsche. "You honky cunt, this all a way to turn me in? Nothing wrong with this fucking car, right?" "It won't go," she says. One flower rests on the toe of one ballet slipper. Her face has shed expression. Skeeter's voice whines and snarls in its metal shell. "Knew I should never come out of that house. Jill, honey, I know why. Can't stay off the stuff, right? No will at all, right? Easier than having any will, hand old Skeeter over to the law, hey, right?" Rabbit asks her, "What's he saying?" "He's saying he's scared."
Skeeter is shouting, "Get them dumb honkies out of the way! I'm making a run for it! How far down on the other side of that fence?" Rabbit says, "Smart move. You'll really stick out up here in the boondocks. Talk about a nigger in the woodpile." "Don't you nigger me, you honky prick. Tell you one thing, you turn me in, I'll get you all greased if I have to send a filly to do it. It's not just me, we're everywhere, hear? Now you fuckers get this car to go, hear me? Get it to go." Skeeter issues all this while crouched down between the leather backs of the bucket seats and the rear window. His panic is disgusting and may be contagious. Rabbit lusts to pull him out of his shell into the sunshine, but is afraid to reach in. He might get stung. He slams the Porsche door shut on the churning, rasping voice, and at the front of the car slams down the hood. "You two stay here. Calm him down. Keep him in the car. I'll walk to a gas station. There must be one up the road." He runs for a while, Skeeter's venomous fright making his own bladder burn. After all these nights together, betrayal is the Negro's first thought. Maybe natural. Running to keep that black body pinned back there, turtle on its back, like running late to school. Skeeter has become a duty. Late, late. Then an antique red flying horse sign suspended above sunset-dyed fields. It is an old-fashioned garage, an unfathomable workspace redolent of oil, the walls precious with wrenches, fan belts, peen hammers, parts. An old Coke machine, the kind that dispenses bottles, purrs beside the hydraulic lift. The mechanic, a weedy young man with a farmer's drawl and black palms, drives him in a jolting tow truck back up the highway. The side window is broken. Air whistles there, hungrily gushes. "Seized up," is the mechanic's verdict. He asks Jill, "When'd you last put oil in it?" "Oil? Don't they do it when they put the gas in?" "Not unless you ask." "You dumb mutt," Rabbit says to Jill. Her mouth goes prim and defiant. Skeeter's been driving the car, too. Skeeter, as the mechanic poked under the hood, uncurled from behind the seats and straightened in the air, his glasses orange discs in the last of the sun. Rabbit asks him, "How far have you been taking this crate?" "Oh," the black man says, fastidious in earshot of the mechanic, "here and there. Never recklessly. I wasn't aware," he minces on, "the automobile was your property." "It's just," he says lamely, "the waste, the carelessness." Jill asks the mechanic, "Can you fix it in an hour? My little brother here has homework to do." The mechanic speaks only to Rabbit. "The engine's destroyed. The pistons have fused to the cylinders. The nearest place to fix a car like this is probably Pottstown. Can we leave it with you until we arrange to have somebody come for it?" "I'll have to charge $1 a day for the parking." "Sure, swell. And that'll be 20 for the towing." He pays out the 20 Buchanan gave him. The mechanic tows the Porsche back to the garage. They ride with him, Jill and Harry, in the cab. "Careful now," the mechanic says as Jill slides over. "I don't want to get grease on that nice white dress." Skeeter and Nelson in the little car dragged backwards at a slant. At the garage, the mechanic phones for a cab to take them into West Brewer. Skeeter disappears behind a smudged door and flushes the toilet repeatedly. Nelson settles to watching the mechanic unhitch the car and listens to him talk about engines. Jill and Harry walk outside. Crickets are shrilling in the dark cornfields. A quarter moon with one sick eye scuds above the flying horse sign. The outer lights are switched off. He notices something white on her slipper. The little flower that fell has stuck there. He stoops and hands it to her. She kisses it to thank him, then silently lays it to rest in a trash barrel full of wiped oil towels and punctured cans. "Don't get your dress greasy." Car tires crackle. An ancient 50s Buick with those tail fins patterned on B-19s pulls into their orbit. The driver is fat and chews gum. On the way back to Brewer, his head bulks as a pyramid against the oncoming headlights, motionless but for the tremor of chewing. Skeeter sits beside him. "Beautiful day," Rabbit calls forward to him. Jill giggles. Nelson is asleep on her lap. She toys with his hair, winding it around her silent fingers. Fair for this time of the year, is the slow answer. Beautiful country up here. We hardly ever get north of the city. We were driving around sightseeing. Not too many sights to see. The engine seized right up on us. I guess the car's a real mess. I guess. My daughter here forgot to put any oil in it. That's the way young people are these days. Ruin one car and on to the next. Material things don't mean a thing to 'em. To some, I guess. Skeeter says sideways to him, "You sure meets a lot of nice folks having an accident like this. A lot of nice folks way up north here." "Yes, well," the driver says, and that is all he says, until he says to Rabbit, having stopped on Villa Crescent, 18. "Dollars? For 10 miles? 12, and I gotta go back 12 now." Rabbit goes to the driver's side to pay while the others run into the house. The man leans out and asks, "Know what you're doing?" "Not exactly. They'll knife you in the back every time." "Who?" The driver leans closer. By street lamp, Rabbit sees a wide, sad face, sallow, a whale's lipless mouth clamped in a melancholy set, a horseshoe-shaped scar on the meat of his nose. His answer is soft. "Jigaboos." Embarrassed for him, Rabbit turns away and sees, Nelson is right, a crowd of children. They are standing across the crescent, some with bicycles, watching this odd car unload. This phenomenon on the bleak terrain of Penn Villas alarms him, as if growths were to fester on the surface of the moon. The incident, his skin daring the sun again, emboldens Skeeter. Rabbit comes home from work to find him and Nelson shooting baskets in the driveway. Nelson bounces the ball to his father, and Rabbit's one-handed set from 20 feet out swishes. "Pretty." "Hey," Skeeter crows, so all the homes in Penn Villas can hear, "Where'd you get that funky old style of shooting a basketball? You were trying to be comical, right?" "Went in," Nelson tells him. "Shit, boy, a one-armed dwarf could have blocked it. To get that shot off, you need a screen 2 men thick, right? You gotta jump and shoot, right?" He demonstrates. His shot misses but looks right, the ball held high, a back-leaning ascent into the air, a soft release that would arch over any defender. Rabbit tries it but finds his body heavy, the effort of lifting jarring. The ball flies badly. Says Skeeter, "You got a white man's lead gut, but I adore those hands." They scrimmage one-on-one. Skeeter is quick and slick, slithering by for the layup on the give-and-go to Nelson again and again. Rabbit cannot stop him. His breath begins to ache in his chest. But there are moments when the ball and his muscles and the air overhead and the bodies competing with his all feel taut and unified and defiant of gravity. Then the October chill bites into his sweat and he goes into the house. Jill has been sleeping upstairs. She sleeps more and more lately, a dazed, evading sleep that he finds insulting. When she comes downstairs in that boring white dress, brushing back sticky hair from her cheeks, he asks roughly, "Did you do anything about the car?" "Sweet, what would I do?" "You could call your mother." "I can't. She and Stepdaddy would make a thing. They'd come for me." "Maybe that's a good idea." "Stepdaddy's a creep." She moves past him, not focusing, into the kitchen. She looks into the refrigerator. "You didn't shop." "That's your job." "Without a car?" "Christ, you can walk up to the Acme in 5 minutes. People would see Skeeter. They see him anyway. He's outside horsing around with Nelson. And evidently you've been letting him drive all around Pennsylvania." His anger recharges itself. Lead gut. "God damn it! How can you just run an expensive car like that into the ground and just let it sit? There's people in the world could live for 10 years on what that car cost." "Don't, Harry. I'm weak." "Okay, I'm sorry." He tugs her into his arms. She rocks sadly against him, rubbing her nose on his shirt. But her body, when dazed, has an absence and unconnectedness that feels disagreeable against his skin. He itches to sneeze. Jill is murmuring, "I think you miss your wife." This book is continued at this point on the other side of this cassette. Jill is murmuring, "I think you miss your wife. That bitch, never. She's like all you people, caught in this society.
She wants to be alive while she is alive. Don't you? Sometimes, but I know it's not enough. It's how they get you. Let me go now. You don't like holding me, I can feel it. I just remembered some frozen chicken livers behind the ice cream, but they take forever to thaw. 6 o'clock news. The pale face caught behind the screen sternly says, unaware that his head, by some imperfection in reception at 26 Vista Crescent, is flattened, and his chin, rubbery and long, says, Chicago. 2,500 Illinois National Guardsmen remained on active duty today in the wake of a day of riots staged by members of the extremist faction of the Students for a Democratic Society. Windows were smashed, cars overturned, policemen assaulted by the young militants whose slogan is, sad, stern pause. The bleached face lifts toward the camera, the chin stretches, the head flattens like an anvil. Bring the war home. Film cuts of white-helmeted policemen flailing at nests of arms and legs, of long-haired girls being dragged, of sudden bearded faces shaking fists that want to rocket out through the television screen. Then back to clips of policemen swinging clubs, which seems ballet-like and soothing to Rabbit. Skeeter, too, likes it. Right on, he cries. Hit that crazy dude again. In the commercial break, he turns and explains to Nelson, it's beautiful, right? Nelson asks, why? Aren't they protesting the war? Sure as a hen has balls, they are. What those crackers protesting if they gotta wait 20 years to get their daddy's share of the pie? They want it now. What would they do with it? Do, boy? They'd eat it. That's what they'd do. The commercial, an enlarged view of a young woman's mouth, is over. Meanwhile, within the courtroom, the trial of the Chicago 8 continued on its turbulent course. Presiding Judge Julius J. Hoffman, no relation to defendant Abby Hoffman, several times rebuked defendant Bobby Seale, whose outbursts contained such epithets as, again, the upward look, the flattened head, the disappointed emphasis, pig, fascist, and racist. A courtroom sketch of Seale is flashed. Nelson asks, Skeeter, do you like him? I do not much cotton, Skeeter says, to establishment niggers. Rabbit has to laugh. That's ridiculous. He's as full of hate as you are. Skeeter switches off the set. His tone is a preacher's ladylike. I am by no means full of hate. I am full of love, which is a dynamic force. Hate is a paralyzing force. Hate freezes. Love strikes and liberates, right? Jesus liberated the money changers from the temple. The new Jesus will liberate the new money changers. The old Jesus brought a sword, right? The new Jesus will also bring a sword. He will be a living flame of love. Chaos is God's body. Order is the devil's chains. As to Robert Seale, any black man who has John Kennel Bad Breath and Leonard Birdbrain giving him fundraising cocktail parties is one house nigger in my book. He has gotten into the power bag. He has gotten into the publicity bag. He has debased the coinage of his soul, and is thereupon, as they say, irrelevant. We black men came here without names. We are the future's organic seeds. Seeds have no names, right? Right, Rabbit says, a habit. Jill's chicken livers have burned edges and icy centers. 11 o'clock news. A gauzy bearded boy, his face pressed so hard against the camera the focus cannot be maintained, screams, "Off the pigs! All power to the people!" An unseen interviewer mellifluously asks him, "How would you describe the goals of your organization?" "Destruction of existing repressive structures, social control of the means of production." "Could you tell our viewing audience what you mean by means of production?" The camera is being jostled. The living room, darkened otherwise, flickers. "Factories, Wall Street, technology, all that. A tiny clique of capitalists is forcing pollution down our throats, and the SST and the genocide in Vietnam and in the ghettos, all that." "I see. Your aim, then, by smashing windows, is to curb a runaway technology and create the basis for a new humanism." The boy looks off-screen blearily as the camera struggles to refocus him. You being funny? You'll be the first up against the wall, you... And the blip showed that the interview had been taped. Rabbit says, "Tell me about technology." "Technology," Skeeter explains with exquisite patience, the tip of his joint glowing red as he drags, "is horse shit. Take that down, Jilly." But Jill is asleep on the sofa. Her thighs glow. They sing. Skeeter goes on. "We are all at work on the mighty labor of forgetting everything we know. We are sowing the apple back on the tree. Now the Romans had technology, right? And the barbarians saved them from it. The barbarians were their saviors. Since we cannot induce the Eskimos to invade us, we have raised a generation of barbarians ourselves. Pardon me. You have raised them. Whitey has raised them. The white American middle class and its imitators the world over have found within themselves the divine strength to generate millions of subhuman idiots that in less benighted ages only the aristocracies could produce. The last Merovingian princes were dragged about in ox carts gibbering, and we are now blessed with motorized gibberers. It is truly written, we shall blow our minds and dedicate the rest to Chairman Mao, right? Rabbit argues, that's not fair. These kids have some good points. The war aside, what about pollution? I am getting weary, Skeeter says, of talking with white folk. You are defending your own. These rabid children, as surely as Agnew Day, desire to preserve the status quo against the divine plan and the divine wrath. They are Antichrist. They perceive God's face in Vietnam and spit upon it. False prophets. By their proliferation, you know the time is nigh. Public shamelessness, ingenious armor, idiocy revered, the laws of bribery and protection the only actual laws. We are Rome, and I am the Christ of the new dark age, or if not me, then someone exactly like me, whom later ages will suppose to have been me. Do you believe? I believe. Rabbit drags on his own joint and feels his world expand to admit new truths as a woman spreads her legs, as a flower unfolds, as the stars flee one another. I do believe. Skeeter likes Rabbit to read to him from the life and times of Frederick Douglass. You're just gorgeous, right? You're going to be our big nigger tonight. As a white man, Chuck, you don't amount to much, but nigger-wise, you groove. He has marked sections in the book with paper clips and a crayon. Rabbit reads, "The reader will have noticed that among the names of slaves that of Esther is mentioned. This was the name of a young woman who possessed that which was ever a curse to the slave girl, namely personal beauty. She was tall, light-colored, well-formed, and made a fine appearance. Esther was courted by Ned Roberts, the son of a favorite slave of Colonel Lloyd, and who was as fine-looking a young man as Esther was a woman. Some slaveholders would have been glad to have promoted the marriage of two such persons, but for some reason Captain Anthony disapproved of their courtship. He strictly ordered her to quit the society of young Roberts, telling her that he would punish her severely if he ever found her again in his company. But it was impossible to keep this couple apart. Meet they would, and meet they did. Then we skip. The red crayon mark resumes at the bottom of the page. Rabbit hears drama entering his voice, early morning mists, a child's fear. It was early in the morning, when all was still, and before any of the family in the house or kitchen had risen. I was, in fact, awakened by the heart-rendering shrieks and piteous cries of poor Esther. My sleeping place was on the dirt floor of a little rough closet which opened into the kitchen. Skeeter interrupts. You can smell that closet, right? Dirt, right? And old potatoes and little bits of grass turning yellow before they can grow an inch, right? Smell that? He slept in there. Hush, Jill says. And through the cracks in the unplaned boards I could distinctly see and hear what was going on without being seen. Esther's wrists were firmly tied, and the twisted rope was fastened to a strong iron staple in a heavy wooden beam above near the fireplace. Here she stood on a bench, her arms tightly drawn above her head. Her back and shoulders were perfectly bare. Behind her stood Old Master, cowhide in hand.